Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Gamefromscratch, and this ongoing Unity shenanigans are just insane, pretty much unprecedented, but that is not to say that they have never happened before. And I'm going to give a bit of a history lesson because it actually has a whole lot of context with what a lot of people are talking about. And a good example of that is this Megacrit quote this is the makers of Slay the Spire. They are obviously not happy about the Unity Runtime Fee, and I want to put something into perspective. What I'm talking about today doesn't even come close to the Unity Runtime Fee fallout, but it is precedent setting, and it does kind of show you just how little something matters. So one thing that they did here is the retroactive pricing structure of runtime fees is not only harmful to a myriad of ways, developers, especially indies, it's also a violation of trust. We believe that Unity is fully aware of this, seeing as they've gone so far as to remove their terms of service from GitHub. That's the key part of the story. I want to get back to that. And then the other part of the story here is, despite the immense amount of time and effort of our team that has already poured into development on our new title, we will be migrating to a new engine unless the changes are completely reverted and terms of service protections are put in place. That's the part I want to talk about, because this is one key thing when you ask people, how can you get back my trust, Unity? And the two big things that are said is roll back all this crap and put in a perpetual EULA. And I actually agree with that completely. You need to have some kind of protection going forward. It's just, drum roll, please. We've been here before. So now the history lesson. I've been covering game development for a very long time, and Unity did something very similar to this in the past. This whole thing about they're removing their terms of service, well, that was actually in direct response to a screw-up they made back in 2019. So if you do not know what I'm talking about, in 2022, in support of their upcoming shenanigans, this whole new Unity Runtime Fee that set the internet on fire, Unity went ahead and basically took away this change they made because of a screw-up they made back in 2019. So then it would change the way the terms of service works, and we would no longer be protected, and then they could do things like try to give in retroactive fees that you didn't agree to when you signed up for Unity. Now, there's a whole lot of questions out there if this is legal at all. In many jurisdictions, there's no way this is going to make it through court. But the whole, can we be protected? Can we trust Unity in the future if they give us a perpetual license thing? Well, that is very important. So the story goes way back in 2019, very beginning of 2019, in fact. There's a company called Improbable who make a product called SpatialOS, which is basically a way to do networking using the Unity game engine. Well, if you go back in time to 2019, one of the big new revenue sources, now does this sound familiar to anyone? So Unity was trying to make new money in a new manner, and one thing they had done is new partnerships with cloud gaming. They were really moving into hosted servers, hosted networking, and so on. And SpatialOS sells a product as a partner for Unity, which basically made it so you could do, I think it was like headless hosted servers, so you could kind of run Unity servers in the cloud. Cloud-based servers is a very normal way to run games, and generally you don't need to have any kind of a special license. It's sort of like, the runtime. It's something you just take for granted. Well, they went and they changed their licensing here. So they went back in time, they changed it on December 5th, and then they told them on January 9th that they were in violation of the terms of service. So Unity back in, I guess that would be late 2018, actually did some retroactive rewriting of their terms of service to screw over one of their vendors, or many of their vendors technically, but SpatialOS was on the front row. And then they said, you're not in violation of the terms of service that we updated, and then more or less shut them down. And this caused, it was not good. They revoked their Unity licensing. They messed with them. Now, what you're seeing in this particular article, and I will link these articles down below, it was a whole multi-part story. I'm not going to go through the whole story and how it resolved and everything. I'm going to go to the beginning and the end, because the end part is probably the more interesting part of the story. But they did this before. They weaponized their terms of service to go after a vendor to make more money, and then there was a community backlash, and then they fought back against it. So, they were changing, here's the terms of service change here of what they made happen, and it more or less, ironically, look at the words here. Unity Runtime made a debut back in 2019 here, but they just basically changed the way that it could license for remotely running things. So you just basically, they made these people's product, a Unity partner's networking product, against the terms of service, and then nailed them on it. And then a bunch of other people, like their products were built on SpatialOS. They were told, okay, it's being shut down. And the funny funny thing is, Tim Sweeney, the head of Epic, gets in. He always gets his dunk in, but he got his dunk in back then as well. And he made a really interesting point way back in 2019. We specifically make the Unreal Engine 4 EULA apply perpetually so that when you obtain a version under a given EULA, you can stay on that version and choose to operate under that EULA forever. It's amazing how sometimes, like, what's old is new again, isn't it? So this was the story back then. If you want to go ahead, I'll watch that video from 2019. It's still an interesting story. And the funny thing is, Epic didn't stop there, because Epic, I don't know if Tim is like one of the biggest trolls out there. This has nothing to do with the story. I just thought it was really kind of funny. Is Epic then in the middle of Improbable being shut down by Unity? Improbable is middleware, so they also work with Unreal Engine as well. So they did this plan with Epic. Epic Games' partnership was Improbable. It's going down here. To assist developers who are left in limbo by the new engine and service incompatibilities that were introduced today, Epic Games and Improbable are together establishing a $25 million combined fund to help developers transition to more open engine services and ecosystems. So yeah, that was a classic Epic Games move. Nothing really to do with this. It's just to show us that Tim is always mindful when his opponents make a misstep, and he normally jumps on it. Just one of those things to talk about. And then this blog came in 2019 in response. So they definitely realized that they screwed up with this Terms of Service update. So this was from, I believe at the time, still CEO. Joachim, we miss you, man. Come on back. One of the original founders, I believe he was CEO still in 2019. He addressed all of this happening. Goes through all of the stuff that happened here. So there was, again, how's this one for the old is new again? There was much confusion, guys. You're just confused. That seems to be a very standard thing here, but they at least did walk this one back. We listened to you, our community, that felt that the end user license agreement terms of service was too restrictive, so they made those terms of service changes that were way too restrictive. They were shutting down, vendor partners and so on. So when you make a game with Unity, you own the content and you should have the right to put it wherever you want. Our terms of service did not reflect this principle, something that is not in line with who we are. We believe that the Unity Engine business model is the best way for developers to be successful. And this, again, the past is prologue. We charge a flat fee per seat, not a royalty on all your revenue. Building Unity takes a lot of resources, and we believe that partnerships make better services for developers and augment our business model, as opposed to charging customers to pay for Unity's development through revenue share. Our terms of service update on December 5th was an attempt to define what our terms mean for the cloud and an opportunity to make our business model more clear. After listening to developers, we realized how this language came across, how it would impact your ability, which, by the way, this is the perfect response. This is actually sort of the response that should have happened with the runtime. Again, it's amazing the parallels between these two stories and the differences in how they were handled. So overview of today's Terms of Service update. So they updated their Terms of Service language is at the bottom of this post. It's nothing really that exciting to read, but Terms of Service highlights that developers can use any third-party service that integrates into Unity. Some of these services will be supported, others will not. Distinction is that with a supported service, we understand the technology. We make sure the services in Unity work better together for developers. We also ensure that supported services will always run well on the latest version. Basically, they've got their official version. So that was the ones that they were basically trying to monetize at the time. But you'll also be able to create your own services. So the specifics of how they screwed up really isn't that important to the story. But we get here now into retroactive terms of service changes. And this is something that we found out in recent days pisses people off. So when you obtain a version of Unity and you don't upgrade your project, we think you should be able to stick with that version of the terms of service. In practice, this is only possible if you have access to bug fixes. For this reason, we will now allow users to continue to use the terms of service for the same major, so 2019, for example, version number, including the LTS builds that you are using in your project. Looking forward, we will host the terms of service changes on GitHub to give developers full transparency about what changed, what's happening, and when. The link is here. So, by the way, yeah. So that brings us full story on how we got back to where we are. But as you may have noticed from this improbable journey, what we're going through right now isn't quite as unprecedented as you've seen. Unity wanted more money. Unity changed their terms of service. Unity really screwed up. Unity walked that back. We've got, let's see, 3/4 of those things already happened in this story. The key thing here is, well, if they update their terms of service again and say, okay, no, we're going to protect you. Whatever version you're on, you can keep it. Well, they just silently went ahead and deleted that part. So that promise is not going to help going forward. So I figured that little history lesson would be kind of interesting to some of you because this isn't as unprecedented as some people think. Let me know what you think, comments down below, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.